Live art started out without that name. It started out with words like performance art, and it was an attempt to re-engage people for whom there was a sense that art had become commodified, and it was an attempt to move the ground rules, particularly the ground rules of the relationship between audience and artist, to redefine those, to disconcert them, to deconstruct them, and that was what the 60s, 70s, 80s was about. As we came into the 90s, of course, the moment you get a name given to it, live art, it becomes something you can teach, so you can have courses in it, you can have university departments dedicated to it, you can have art centres dedicated to it, and I suppose in that sense it had the seeds of its own demise. What it is now is very much a convention. You can almost do live art by numbers, which is to say you can, as it were, find out what the necessary parameters for live art are and then just simply fulfill them. So I suppose you'd say live art is always something which is escaping from itself and attempting to continue that revolution of the relationship between artist and audience by whatever means. And of the last few years, I've been very interested by the extent to which it has co-opted a lot of the techniques which we as community artists in our time developed to do that in a different way, by engaging with ordinary people, by engaging with their ability to contribute to projects, to essentially be makers. I think of street theatre, which is something that happens on the street, and people look at it, they register it street theatre, and they either stay or move on. And that's their prerogative because it's out in a public space. One-to-one requires at least a very high level of election, of decision to be participant in something. It also broadens the emotional range, whilst at the same time narrowing the spatial range, and produces, I think, moments of intensity, which in some sense replicate or draw upon those moments of intensity we have in our ordinary human relations, but subject them to a degree of perspective. But the moment you get two people in a space, and that space is in some way separate, normal rules don't apply. It's possible to be imaginatively and emotionally completely freed from the outside rules beyond the space. And in that, almost anything can happen. That's why it's very important. Whether or not that is open depends upon the imagination and the preparedness to participate of the two people in the room. And it is part of the artist's role to encourage the person who comes in, who we will call audience for the moment, to release themselves from some of the boundaries and intercessions and inhibitions that are outside, so that a form of play takes place. And I don't mean a play as in a scripted performance. I mean that mutual engagement through semi-artificialized activities. And on that basis, huge amounts of things are possible. It is open in that way, but it must be understood by both parties that openness is of the nature of what will happen.